The next one is circular hems. I love this because it's just such a cool trick. Let's say this was a skirt. I've just done it mini so that you can see it more easily in the video. And let's say I decide I'm going to do a 2 centimeter hem. I'm just going to finger press this so it's easier. First of all, this part can be quite, time consuming because you're kind of going around and you literally have to go at every point of the circle. I'll just kind of draw the line here where I've used my pressing tool. Watch what happens when I start folding this in. Can you see what's happening? We have a lot of bunching up of fabric. If we're sewing that, we're basically sewing over like folds of fabric, and that's probably not going to look very crisp and clean from the outside. The reason for that is, if you think about it, the circle here is much bigger than the circle here. So we're folding something in, and then the excess from the bigger circle is having to get folded up. But one thing that we can do to help this is we can make a smaller hem. So if you have a circular hem, like let's say you have a circular skirt, or even maybe on the curved hem there of the shirt we were looking at, the smaller the hem is, the less of a difference between the two circles. So even if you did like a 0.5 centimeter, you might even get away with like that little bit of excess because it would be very small. That's one thing you can do. Another thing you can do, instead of using a hemming tool or like going around and measuring with your ruler or your measuring tape, and marking 2 all the way around, what you can do is you can do that marking with your sewing machine. So if you look at the inner circle here, this purple circle, I just did a line of stitches. I used the longest length of stitch, so I used stitch length 4, just a straight stitch. And instead of having to use the measuring tape or this hemming tool, I just used the seam guide on my sewing machine, and I went around, I think it's 1 centimeter. Did a 1 centimeter circle all the way around. So instead of having to mark it, it's just marked it for me, and it's much easier. The reason you do a longer one is because you don't really need the stitches, you just need it for the marking. And then it makes it much easier to be able to fold in because you have that stitch line as your guide. Now, we still have the problem with the excess material. So the way we get around that is we do a line of gathering stitches. What gathering stitches are basically the longest stitch in your machine. So it's the same again, but this time you do them just like somewhere between the edge and the stitch line you've just done. So I think I did mine at 0.5. And the thing about it that is important is that you leave very long tails at the ends. So you can see I have a long tail here and a long tail here. The reason we want them long is because we're going to pull them. So if I gather like one thread, so I'm going to do the top thread. So this is my line of gathering stitches. I'm just getting the top thread, so not the one on the bottom, and I'm just going to pull that. And you'll see when I pull it, what happens is it gathers here. So as I go around, what I can do is I can distribute those gathers all the way around so that I can fold this in, and then the gathering stitch is going to gather in the little bit of excess, but in a very nice even way rather than these big huge folds. So you can kind of do it as you go around. What I would probably do is I'd probably do a big chunk of gathers at the beginning and try to just spread them around a bit. And then it kind of saves you from having to do it every time. So you can do that side, and then we can again use our long piece of thread. So you just want to pull one of the threads. You can pull the back one or the front one, it doesn't really matter, but I just pull one. So you can see we're just gathering that all the way around. And like, to be honest, because it's such a small hem, that's probably enough gathers for the whole thing. If you spread them around kind of evenly at the start, then you can always introduce more gathers if you need them. And so now that means, like, let's say if we go to here, when we're folding our hem where we're going to sew, so we can pin this now. I would pin this a lot because obviously it's doing its own thing and we want it to stay where we have put it. You can see that I don't have any big puckers now. I just have nice even gathers all the way around. So you can go then to your machine once you've got the whole thing pinned and got it nice and flat, and then you can go and turn the outside bit down. So fold that down and then stitch very close to this fold, because that gets rid of this raw edge as well. So that's probably what I would do. So you're just doing 2 lines of stitching. You're starting off doing a line of stitching just as your marking tool, so wherever you want your hem allowance to be. If it's 2 centimeters, you can do it 2 centimeters in, although again, the smaller the hem, the better for circular hems. Then you're going to do a line of gathering stitches somewhere in here, anywhere in here. Then you're going to fold it in, pull your gathering stitches, and before you stitch down and pin, you're going to fold the raw edge under, and then you're going to sew close to this edge. So it's just a really nice, neat way of doing it, rather than being at your machine and like just thinking, oh my God, where are all these puckers coming from and what am I going to do with them? You know, that looks really nice and neat, and it will look really nice from the other side as well.